talk about crafts, it's important to recognize the peculiar characteristics that make craft work. And I think what we will do in particular is to sort of warn against sort of a one-dimensional use of terms like markets and business models. See, this is the picture that we use, and I give a brief explanation. When we talk about business model and the markets, then we immediately go to what we call the M, the sphere of the market, and the sphere of the G, and that's the sphere of organizations. Mostly markets, and then you think about products and prices, and you think about demand and supply. Well, most of us know that perfectly well. And we also think about organizations, how they can adapt to it, and they do marketing, and they have to figure out their pricing and maybe involve governments because they are a collective organization. They're all part of the G. So if you want to understand how crafts had the values of craft, and when we use the word values of the crafts, not just financial values, but all the crafts, all the values that are involved, also cultural values and social values, then you have to take into account other spheres. So I prefer to use, instead of business model, development models, to understand that you realize values in other spheres. Many of the craft practices are realized at the home. In this picture, that's the O. O stands for oikos, for home. But often crafts take place for people working at home, involving family members, learning it from their fathers or their mothers about how to do it. So it has to do with family relationships. The S and the CP stands for the social sphere. That crafts often come about in communities. People are related to it, so you need to be connected to others. And the CP stands for common practices. That crafts are often part of a whole community, but not only there, because if you talk about ceramics, it can involve all kinds of countries, and it then indeed is a sort of a practice that people have in common with others. That's critical. And for the practices to come about and to be developed and have a sort of strength and a quality, you need to have the participation and contribution of lots of craftspeople. And in many countries, like in Japan, but also Italy, we see that also because then the community of craftspeople is organized in some way. In Germany, you see it also very strongly in the form of guilds, and that these organizations then also issue master titles, or in Japan, you can be a national treasury as an exceptional craftsperson. But all these institutions support what you would call these common practices, and although market logic plays a role in it, and organizational logic also, the most important, as we find, characteristic are these common practices that they need to support it. If you over-commercialize it or over-organize it, especially with governments, then as we say, as we economists say, crowd out the social and cultural values of these common practices. Now, the P stands for personal. So with crafts work, you find that being a craftsman is important in and of itself. In native societies in the United States, being a craftsperson is an important part of your identity, of pride, and being skilled at something gives a satisfaction in and of itself. And the all-comprehensive sphere is what we call the cultural sphere, that's often connected to certain practices that go on through the ages, change, of course, but gives a sense of history and heritage. So there's a certain conservative element to it, in the sense that you want to maintain what exists and want to continue and protect for the future, as we also often conclude. It sort of stands for certain qualities in the personal sphere, but qualities also in the social sphere, but that has to be represented by a sort of a shared understanding and sort of sense making of the relevance of the craft. So to conclude, we think that the valorization of the crafts. So if you think about a business model, again, I prefer a development model, and you want to think about the craft, about pricing, that all is relevant. I mean, I'm not saying disparage that, but what we argue is you also should put it in the broader context, not just look at demand, supply, and pricing, but you should consider the sort of common practices, the cultural sense-making practices that take place, the personal practices that are involved, the families that are engaged. And to understand that for craft practice to be sustained, all these other practices are relevant and contribute. So that's the argument. Business model in a broader perspective, taking into account all these various practices, and that when you valorize crafts, you just not only generate the price, but also generate the cultural and social values that play a role in the crafts.